It is 6 o'clock. I'd like to call the Rock County Board of Supervisors meeting to order and ask that Supervisor Clayson read the invocation and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Chair. As we meet tonight at the end of March, the month designated as Women's History Month, I'd like to quote Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the second woman on the Supreme Court. "We will all profit from a more diverse, inclusive society, understanding, accommodating, and even celebrating our differences while pulling together for the common good." So with that in mind, as we come together tonight, may we remember that we represent a diverse community. May we recognize the value of all voices. May we value reason and logic over disinformation and fear-mongering. May we embrace dialogue and critical thinking to build solutions rather than to create divisiveness. And finally, may all of us here tonight embody the shared mission of making Rock County an even better place to live. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Lisa, if you'd please call the roll.
Beaver. Baumkamp. Bryan. I see you there, Tom. Clayson.
Here.
Prairie. Cullen.
Here.
Farrell.
Here.
Fox. Knutson. Levy.
Here.
Mawhinney.
Here.
Pier.
Present.
Pennycook.
Here.
Podzilny.
Here.
Rashkin.
Here.
Richard. Schneider.
Here.
Scholes.
Here.
Stevens.
Here.
Sutherland.
Here.
Sweeney.
Here.
Towns.
Here.
Whitledge.
Here.
Wilson.
Here.
Winter. Woodman.
Here.
Zorro.
Here.
Boswick.
Here.
26 present, 2 absent, 1 vacant.
We do have a quorum. Next item, please.
Next item is consent agenda. 4A, adoption of agenda. 4B, approval of minutes from March 9th, 2023. 4D, recognition of county employees and others. 4D1, to recognize Rock County social workers. 4E1, authorizing the acceptance of the CVSO Act grant and amending the 2023 Veteran Services Office budget. 2, requesting with State of Wisconsin to revise the real estate transfer fee revenue sharing formula. 3, authorization to purchase Microsoft Enterprise Agreement renewal. 4, authorizing the Human Services Department to enter into a contract with a CLTS provider. 5, approve airport fuel tank removal and installation bid. 6, accepting the 2023 high-intensity drug trafficking area HIDTA grant and amending the Sheriff's Office budget. We are removing 11C, establishing the ad hoc committee on passenger rail development. That is the end of the consent agenda.
Are there any objections to items on the consent agenda? Supervisor Schneider.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I object to 4A.
Any other objections to items on the consent agenda?
Adoption of the agenda.
Any questions about items on the consent agenda? With the exception of item 4A, consent agenda passes.
So the next item is 4A, adoption of agenda.
Is there a motion? Supervisor Mawhinney, seconded by Supervisor Sweeney. Supervisor Schneider?
I move to remove 7A, the appointments of Board of Health.
Second.
Who was the second, please?
Supervisor Zorl.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to remove item number 7. Discussion. Supervisor Schneider.
I just wanted to clarify, on March 6th, I asked if I could see the people who applied for the Board of Health and applications so I could make a decision on how to vote for those appointments, and I only got names. So it was about 17 days ago that I requested that, and I only got the names. So I'd really like to see that information before I vote on those appointed.
Okay, it was my understanding, talking with Haley, that it was just the names. I didn't realize that you were looking for.
No, when I talked to her by phone, I asked if I could have the names and if I could see the applications, just to see their qualifications.
Okay, others? Supervisor Zorl?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have the same concern. I also asked for additional information so I could come to the meeting prepared tonight. As we're aware, our bylaws require that the board is in charge of confirming the appointments. So I asked for more information about who was appointed, and I was not given that information. The reason why is because there's potential for personal information to be disclosed, which requires some time for redaction before it could be shared with board members. So given that, there's just insufficient time for the supervisors to review the qualifications and background of the proposed appointees. And we have a need for transparency and fairness in the appointment process. So I'd encourage my fellow board members to support this motion in the interest of making a well-informed decision.
Other comments? Josh, would you explain the implications of not passing this tonight, please?
So it's certainly up to the board to determine whether you want to confirm or not confirm, or to remove from the agenda. The one implication is to be aware of is that the current terms of the members expire at the end of April, or at the end of March. And so the April Board of Health meeting will not be able to occur until these appointments are made. So if you don't consider these until your April 13th board meeting, the meeting that will occur in the first, that's supposed to occur in the first week of April will either have to be postponed or canceled until the next meeting. So just to be aware of that.
Other comments, questions? Supervisor Mohini?
Thank you. What process was used in choosing these people?
Okay, the procedure we used was this. I formed a small group consisting of Vice Chair Levy, Second Vice Chair Bryan, and Supervisor Peer, who is the chair of the Board of Health Committee. We got together and went through all the submitted materials, and after a lot of thought and discussion, we selected the members presented before you. In the final analysis, we selected a doctor, 2 with nursing backgrounds, 1 retired and 1 still active in the profession, 1 pharmacist, and 1 medical researcher. 2 of the 5, the doctor and the nurse, are new to the board. That represents a 40% turnover rate. As far as regional representation is concerned, we have 1 member from Edgerton, 1 from Milton, 2 from Janesville, and 1 from Beloit. We feel that this board has the experience and professional diversity to make decisions that are in the best interest of the county. So that's the process we employed. Questions? Lisa, would you read the motion, please, before we vote?
Motion is to remove item 7A from the agenda.
Supervisor Peer has.
Supervisor Peer.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. You did a good job in describing the choices that were made. I guess I would add on to that. I didn't quite hear it anyway, mentioned in there that we have a couple people who have several years, like the pharmacist has been on the board for 10 years. We have a Beloit assistant professor in biology, so she's in the field. We have the current vice chair is a former member of the state assembly. And the medical doctor has something like 26 years of experience. It is required that a medical doctor be on the Board of Health, so that's the reason that that he was chosen. And another person that had experience in nursing is also chair of the Beloit Health System Nursing Clinic in Beloit and Procedure Committee. We have a 40% turnover from the choices that were made, so there's a balance of people who have a lot of experience and also those who would be new to the board but also have several years' experience in the field. Thank you.
Others? Okay, this is roll call. Please, would you read that again, please, Lisa, just to make sure people know?
So this is to remove item 7A from the agenda.
If you want it removed, yes. If you don't, you want it removed? No.
Okay, this is roll call. Please vote.
Yes, 9, no 17, absent 3. Item 7A remains on the agenda.
Next item, please.
Next item, item 5, public hearing. We do not have a public hearing this evening. Item 6, citizen participation, communications, and announcements. We have several speakers signed up to speak this evening. When you come up to the podium, please state your name and address. You'll be given 2 minutes to speak. The first speaker is Maxwell Olson.
Okay. Good evening. I'm Maxwell Olson, 1243 Brown Drive, Milton. I'm an 8th grade student at Milton Middle School. I'm also the middle school representative to the City of Milton Parks and Recreation Commission. I am speaking before you today to ask for the consideration of a Youth in Governance program. Youth in Governance program could range from creating advisory seats from a youth perspective on individual committees to creating youth advisory seats on the at-large county board. The issues that participants in the program could address could range from youth mental health, better use of resources designed to serve youth, and the creation of initiatives to better the citizens of Rock County from all ages. A Youth in Governance program would provide youth with an opportunity to learn the proper procedure and rules of order in committees. The opportunity to meet other youth across Rock County. The opportunity to learn the legislative process at the county level. And invaluable critical thinking, communication, and leadership skills. A Youth in Governance program would also provide the county and its officials with a fresh perspective from a group that is not often involved in government. Counties such as Milwaukee, Dane, Racine, and Kenosha, among many others in Wisconsin and across the nation, have already started youth involvement in government programs, and I believe it is time for Rock County to do the same. Thank you.
Next speaker is Sally Horton.
Antibiotics in the food.
My name is Sally Horton. I live at 721 Hyatt Street in Janesville. I'm here to speak on 2 topics, transparency and common sense. And I'm speaking from my understanding of how the county board works and what's going to happen here tonight. My understanding is that the board will vote to accept or reject appointees to the health committee, whatever the proper term is. I'm told these names were placed on the agenda Wednesday night, last night. So even if their information and qualifications had been available, the board members would not have had a chance to do due diligence, as may be expected by their constituents, to see if these people should indeed be on the board. Not surprisingly, many of the appointees are known mask and vax supporters, both of which, by the way, violate the U.S. Constitution, Fourth Amendment. If the board's true purpose is to serve the people of this county with honor and integrity, the applications for these positions should have been posted online for the whole public to see. Certainly, any personal information like phone number, whatever somebody thinks shouldn't be out there for the public, go ahead and redact it. Certainly a first name and experience for the position should be something that can be viewed by all. If there's nothing to hide, why are you hiding it? I feel that these should have been posted online as soon as they were received, viewable to the public, and at least a public notice of a minimum of 1 week given before the vote. Common sense, I'd like to talk about that now, says that you spend money you already have before you go to the expense of borrowing more. Borrowing money may serve Wall Street and bankers well, but it does not serve the struggling taxpayers of this county. We're already barely getting by, and we all know we've got a big tax increase coming for the jail. Rather than borrow more money to pay for road maintenance, why not use COVID funds for acceptable AV expenditures, move that money to the road fund, then find other places to cut and send that money to the road fund? It's called cutting your coat to fit the cloth. We all here have to do it. Why should the board be above doing what the people they represent have to do?
Thank you, Sam.
It makes far more sense than wasting money on needless programs and would end the need to frighten the hardworking men and women of the county road crew with layoff threats, which appear to me to be designed to scapegoat the fiscally responsible board members. Transparency and common sense. Let's get some. Thank you.
Next speaker is Dan DeFore.
My name's Dan DeFore, and I live at 4451 Red Oak Drive in Janesville. My grandfather would tell me, fix the roof before the storm. A storm is here, and it's time for the board to work together to fix the roof. Last month's Consumer Price Index report shows inflation still up over 6%, with staples like groceries, energy, and transportation up double digits. We've had 24 straight months of declining wages, meaning people are working harder to get poorer. We have 3 banks that have failed in the last week, and there's over 180 others that are teetering on collapse. Also, now we are seeing corporations laying off employees by the tens of thousands, to include Amazon right here in Rock County. Locally, we know homelessness is on a dramatic rise. The president of Eco Charities in their winter newsletter stated, the demand for affordable housing is growing at an incredible pace. And of course, property taxes play a key role in that. I go to city council meetings like the one in Beloit this week, and I hear about increasing homelessness. It's everywhere. Also, I spent a few hours earlier this week speaking with homeless people in Janesville, and they believe homelessness is up over 50%. I talked to them directly, which they believe has been attributed by the poor economy. Folks, it's time to fix the roof. Nearly every business and family has been forced to do this by reworking budgets and avoiding unnecessary debt. County government must do the same. This past November, 15 county supervisors demonstrated leadership and foresight to lower county taxes by needlessly avoiding increased debt. This week, we see the General Services Committee asking the right questions too. Tonight, it is time to avoid additional debt and to prioritize essential services over those nice-to-have budgetary items, and that we all know are there. All your easy decisions are behind you. Thank you.
Next speaker is Oakley Ryan.
Oakley Ryan, 1000 East Milwaukee Street, Janesville, Wisconsin. Does my time walking up count? Okay, good. Dear County Board Supervisors, I'm here on behalf of Forward Janesville as the past chair of the board. Our CEO, Angela Pakes, was able to speak this morning at the Planning Commission. We appreciate the work that you, the board, does, and we appreciate being able to engage with you. This is democracy at work. I'm here to thank and applaud you on the strategic plan for taking the necessary steps of defining what are the goals and objectives beyond our legislated required duties as a county by embarking on the strategic planning process. I remember a few years ago, Supervisor Boswick reached out to me with questions about an operational excellence initiative. Working on your organization while you work in it is key. I remember the call for proposals publicly, and it looks like from the report that you had a good partner in Baker Tilly. Reviewing the strategic plan, we appreciated the process you used and engagement opportunities. We appreciated the core strategic areas of focus. We went through that our own process in 2018. And we look forward to partnering with you going forward as we tackle critical issues like health outcomes and housing. Today, I am excited about Rock County and what we have and what we can develop and what we can nurture. My children in their 20s come home from Chicago via the train, and I pick them up at Harvard Station. They come back to be with family, but they enjoy spending time in our community, our thriving downtowns, and our amazing parks. We must build a county that protects and nurtures the young and old and invites our next generation to return. Today, there's an opportunity of alignment, of vision, leadership, and plans. There's both steady leadership and new faces in this county, new city managers, new superintendents, new CEOs of chambers, and we have those who have served and have a history of leadership, especially during COVID. This is a great combination, but how we converge is through well-articulated plans where we can track common goals, action plans, and outcomes. People come together in collaboration to make an impact. We'll set Rock County apart. We thank you for the support of this process. Look forward to engaging with you in these critical issues for Janesville and the county. Thank you for your service.
That was the last person signed up to speak. Was there anyone else that wanted to speak this evening? We had two comments that were submitted prior to the county board meeting. Dear county board members, on February 9th and February 23rd, items were pulled from the consent agenda, and it's been noted in the meeting minutes what was pulled. Reason for pulling the items should have been noted in the minutes. The two emails I have sent to the chair and the clerk on March 9th and March 18th requesting the reason behind the pulling of authorization to borrow for highway operations have not been answered. I'm now publicly asking that you take action to see that you know the reasons why items are pulled from an agenda and that it's also noted in the minutes for the public's knowledge as well. From Sheila Williams, 3611 Candlewood Drive, Janesville. The second item is resolution authorizing general obligation bonds for highway road construction, 3.66 million. Dear board members, I'm encouraging a no vote to add almost 4 million of debt for standard road maintenance unless this is a significant emergency repair or part of a plan to fast forward road maintenance. These types of expenses clearly should be part of a planned capital and financed by county revenues. This sets a dangerous precedence to start band-aiding the budget with borrowing without prioritizing or cutting unneeded spending to get in line with revenue. It's hard to believe that over a $2 million budget This funding couldn't have been found internally. Michael Schwartz, 3611 Candlewood Drive, Janesville. That's the last of the items that were submitted.
Are there any supervisors with communications tonight? Supervisors? Anything from staff? Next item.
Next item. Item 7, nominations, appointments, and confirmations. 7A, appointments to the Board of Health.
Moved by Supervisor Peer, seconded by Supervisor Bryan. Comments, questions? Supervisor Zorel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have 10 questions in terms of process here. Would it be easier to read them one at a time or read them all at once and then get answers?
Easier to forget it.
I would say, why don't you do one and we'll go to other supervisors and come back instead of 10 in a row.
Okay. The first question is not actually from me, it's from a constituent that asked me to ask it, and it is, why did you remove a practicing physician, which I believe is Daniel Stadler, and keep a retired politician and college professor?
I'll just speak to the physician. We had another physician who applied who seemed to have better qualifications. That's as much as I'll say about that. I'm not going to mention much about unsuccessful candidates. I don't want to be disparaging anyone. So, other comments? Supervisor Sutherland?
Thank you, Chair. This list seems good to me, and I'd like to take this time to express thanks to the appointees for bringing their intellect and insight to the Board of Health Committee. Thank you.
Other comments, questions? Supervisor Schneider?
I guess one of our, what we're supposed to be aligned with as a board is equity. And I'm concerned that all of the appointees are Caucasian. I don't know if there were minorities in the mix, but that doesn't necessarily fit with our equity goal.
I'm not quite sure of the ethnic makeup of the candidates. I don't know. I could venture guesses, but I'm not going to do that. So, and I know that's something that we strive to do, but in this case, I had no way of knowing. We just didn't. Other comments, questions? Supervisor Peer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Without getting into names, I would say that all the membership of the board was laid down, and then we selected these. And in particular, as I said earlier, the board, the state requires that a medical doctor be on this board. And in addition to laying down everyone that was formerly on the board, it was required that they put in an application and that they give a resume. And some of the people that were not chosen, and I can think of one in particular, and again, I won't mention any names, but I was greatly disappointed because I'm sure that person would have been placed on the board. The qualifications were that good, but didn't bother to turn in the resume. So you got to do what's required, and that's part of an answer to what's been brought up. You gotta fulfill the requirements that are there. Otherwise, you kind of leave it out of our hands, or out of whoever the committee is, you leave it out of their hands. And I guess something else I'd like to mention, and it's not to build up a hindrance at all, but my understanding is this is the way it's going to be now, that no matter how long someone has served on the board or what kind of a job they've done, it's going to be laid down. That doesn't set right sometimes with people who do a really good job. So maybe, that entered into it. I don't know. And the other thing where I hear people who really have, I think, some criticisms of the way things have functioned in the past, and they have aspirations for how it will be in the future. But it seems like there's a correlation there also with people that want something like that. And you also hear them saying the mantra, well, we're out for the taxpayers. We really want to see the taxpayers' money used well. I think when you vote for this, you want to think about the amount of time that's going to be spent in discussing this and has already been spent choosing these people. That's taxpayers' money that's going for something that in the past, and I know we can't just live in the past, I don't mean it that way, but it seems like a good job can be done and we don't have to spend hours fine-tooth combing every little detail. And the other thing that's going through my mind is we have a representative democracy, and we form committees that make decisions and trust that they will do a good job. And it would be glaringly so if they didn't. So I think there's something to be said for that as well. Otherwise, where are we heading? Thank you.
Supervisor Farrell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not that familiar with the requirements of being on this board. However, I do note that there's not one supervisor on here. Does every member have to be medically trained? It seems like a layman's point of view. And I think we represent the people. And I wondered if there's a specific reason there's not any supervisors on this board. If that's somehow a law, state law, that you have to be medically trained, or is it just an omission? Thank you.
The Board of Health is made up of 9 people, and 4 of those are supervisors, and the other 5
Okay, thank you.
are from the community.
Thank you.
Supervisor Schneider?
I just have 2 comments about transparency. The first one, I'm wondering if when people who applied, when they did apply, did they get a confirmation? One constituent told me they didn't get a confirmation, so they didn't know if they, it was received. And the second is, I really think it's important, as far as transparency, for us to be able to look at applications before we make this vote, just as our due diligence and transparency.
Duly noted. Supervisor Beaver?
I'd like to call the question, please.
I'll second it.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to call the question, which would
Point
end
of
debate.
order. Mr. Chair, you mentioned that you'd come back to me at the end.
After we've heard from everyone, but if the question is called in the meantime, then that takes precedence.
Is that the ruling?
That is the ruling.
I move to appeal the decision of the chair.
Okay, that requires a second.
It actually doesn't.
To try and overrule the chair.
My Robert Rules cheat sheet says that it does.
Would you be able to refer to the page, please?
I sure can try to find it quick.
What are we asking for a second to? What's it?
So that, if I can explain while the Corporation Council is looking that up. So if the chair makes a ruling, the body can appeal the chair's ruling. And what happens then is, whether there's a first or second, then the board gets to vote and decide whether the chair's ruling that debate would be ended, taking precedence over allowing Supervisor Zorel to finish his questions, is what the board will vote on. So if the board gets to vote, then they would be voting to whether to allow the board's ruling to stand, that debate is ended, and then there's a second vote on whether to end debate. And if you disagree with the board's ruling, then Supervisor Zorel would get to ask his questions, if that makes sense.
Does Supervisor Zorel need a second?
Yeah.
That's what
Second.
Corporation Counsel is looking at. Okay.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. And this is to determine Supervisor Stevens,
I just want to be clear.
trying to clarify it.
So I guess I'm trying to figure out, so does this mean Supervisor Zorro gets to ask us 10 questions if your ruling is overruled? Is that what we're talking about?
Right. Unless Corporation Counsel has any other thoughts.
Is what the appeal is yes, it's appealing whether or not calling the question would in fact foreclose on Supervisor Zorro being able to ask the questions that he had wanted to. And just for, it was page T10 is where the appeal needs a second. So that did need a second, but it got one. So that is what we would be, is being appealed right now, is whether or not it forecloses the questions.
Okay, thank you.
No, all right.
Call point of order.
Supervisor Pierre.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My understanding is right now, we're voting on whether the chair's ruling stands. If it does, then we go on. If it isn't, then we would vote on calling to order. Is that correct? We gotta vote on the chair's ruling first. Am I wrong or am I right?
I think I'm confused by your question, and I apologize. So what I understand is happening right now is there has been a ruling, there was a ruling, and the ruling is being appealed. And so the question now is whether or not the county board body wishes to uphold the decision or overrule that decision. So sustain the decision of the chair or overrule that decision of the chair. If the decision is sustained, the question is called. If the decision is overruled, that would allow discussion to continue for those 10 questions and then the question to be called. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Just to make it perfectly clear, though, a yes means that we would vote. That vote, a yes would mean that the chair's ruling stands. A no would mean that it doesn't. Then we would vote to the call to order, correct?
No.
No?
It means we're overruling the chair.
The other way?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Can you run that by me again, please?
A no vote on the appeal means that the decision of the chair is sustained. A yes vote on the appeal means that the decision of the chair is overturned.
Thank you.
Yes.
Are we clear on that? Supervisor Cullen?
Just my comment is, we got to do what's right here. You promised him that he'd be able to finish his questions, and then he got cut off. And what's the right thing to do? Follow up on your promise.
I said I'd circle back, but if the question is called, in my mind, then we act on that. That's a motion.
Circle back assumed that you were going to call on him and let him finish his questions. If anybody disagrees with me on that, the assumption was that you'd come back to him.
Okay, I guess that if somebody calls a question, that takes precedence, because that comes up all the time. Supervisor Zorro?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With regards to overruling this or not, and the logic behind it, I'd like to remind the board that I did to be respectful to everybody else, that they had a chance to talk. And if I'm not going to be getting that respect in return, and Mr. Chair wants me to ask one question, I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to hold the floor until I get through all my questions. So, when I ask in terms of, the process we're going to use, I think we should follow that. And it's not just an issue here of asking questions. There's actually a state statute that we're in violation right now, and I can't get into it because it wouldn't be germane, with regards to what Supervisor Schneider was talking about in the diversity questions. It's in the state statutes, and I can't even discuss that So I don't think we should call the question. So if we're not going to call the question, do I need to vote yes? Is that how it would work?
A yes vote would be to sustain the appeal, would be to overrule the decision of the chair.
Shouldn't the people be able to hear what we have to say? I kind of like to know what he has to say as a citizen.
You're not recognized.
That's why you hear me.
But I just, it's a yes vote. Yes vote would overrule, is that right? Overrule the chair's decisions.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Beaver.
I would like to withdraw my calling the question, and that'll straighten this all out. You did promise, you did say he could do his 10, so I'm going to withdraw it.
Okay, does the second need to be withdrawn?
Wait, guys. I don't know that it can be withdrawn because it's with the board at this point, and because it was seconded, and so I think it just, the board is what owns it now. So if the board wishes to allow it to be withdrawn, I think it has to be unanimous. I think it's one of those decisions or it goes to the vote.
Could you clarify that?
In some specific way?
The question is, does the person who made the second for calling the question have to withdraw the second?
And it would be my understanding of the rules that once it is seconded, once it's with the body, once debate has happened, it's now going, the appeal vote is now going to go to the body. If the body wishes to agree to allow the motion to be withdrawn, I think that would be an appropriate way to go forward. But I don't know that just the motion to call the question, now that the appeal has been raised, can be withdrawn.
Point of parliamentary inquiry. I believe the motion of calling the questions an informal motion and therefore a not real motion unless the entire board agrees to it. Able to refer
You know,
to where-
unfortunately, I don't have that knowledge immediately in my head, and I don't know that I'm going to be able to find it in any sort of an immediate way. So
I move to recess until we can find out. Unless perhaps the person who seconded would withdraw the second, would that fix it?
No, that's not what she said.
Supervisor Fox.
Let's just vote.
Yeah, I think another way to, I think, say what Corporation Counsel is saying is that, regardless of what outcome you want on the withdrawing or the not withdrawing, as Supervisor Fox suggests, voting to overrule the chair will get you back to that point anyway. So if you want to support Supervisor Beaver's intent of allowing the discussion to continue, as she made the original motion, then maybe the easiest path forward is just to go ahead and vote on overruling the chair. And if you vote yes, then we're back to where we started, and then questions can continue. So that might be just the easiest path forward.
Supervisor Stevens.
One more time. Yes overrules the chair, no does not overrule the chair, correct? Okay, great.
Okay, this will be roll call. Please vote.
This will be interesting. Be the same 6, 7, maybe.
Yes, 12, no, 14, 3 absent. So that means that the chair's ruling stands, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Okay, so we are back to calling the question. A yes vote means you want to see debate ended. A no vote means you want to see it continue. Any questions? Roll call, please vote.
Yes, 16, no 10, 3 absent.
Disrespectful board.
Bridget, is that 2/3 required on this?
To call the question, this is just calling the question. I don't think so. I don't think so, no.
So just majority?
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Supervisor Baumkamp.
I just Googled Robert's Rule of Order. It says it's 2/3 for when they call the question.
So then debate continues if it's 2/3?
In Wisconsin?
Mr. Chair, is that what we do here, though? I didn't think we ever needed 2/3 to call the question with us. Is that what we've always done? I didn't think we ever needed 2/3.
To be honest, I don't ever recall a 2/3 for call the question.
Our statute here that we've always needed 2/3, because as long as in the 2 years that I've been on county board, we've never needed 2/3 as far as I know.
Page T15. Motion number 32.
So again, with the understanding that I am maybe the less knowledgeable than Corp Counsel Greenlee would be, I believe in the past, our board has always done it by a simple majority, and I may be wrong in my recollection of that, but that's what my recollection is. It does appear that the motion to limit debate is a 2/3, but again, I'm not, but that is with my, that much amount of time of looking into it.
Point of parliamentary inquiry. Our board rules of procedure state that we are to follow Robert's Rules of Order, unless it says otherwise, so it would be 2/3 unless our rules override that.
I don't know.
Okay, I think for the sake of clarity and accuracy, let's take a 5-minute recess to allow Corp Counsel to research this to make sure of what our rules state. I don't want to do something without being sure of that. So is there a motion for a recess?
I'll move.
Motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, we take a 5 to 10 minute recess. I will entertain a motion and a second to go back into the meeting. Moved by Supervisor Bryan, seconded by Supervisor Stevens. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, the ruling from Corp Counsel is that it is a 2/3 vote, so discussion can continue. And if people have something to say, raise your card and we'll go from there. Supervisor Zorro.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we got a little bit off track there, but I'd like to say that I actually agree with Supervisor Peer when he mentioned that it's very important that we fulfill the requirements of the job postings. And I'd like to point out that something that the board has totally missed so far with regards to requirements, and our chair recently said that we didn't know what the, I believe, diversity was of this. And before I say this, I want to be clear, I'm not necessarily advocating one way here, but there's a state statute, and that's 251.031, where it talks about local Board of Health members. And if you look at the state statutes, this is Wisconsin state law, okay? This is not my opinion, it's just the state law. And it says, members of the local Board of Health shall reflect the diversity of the community. And I want to know, how do we know that we're following state statutes when we are just told that that's information that you don't collect? So that would be my next question.
I guess there's no way that we would know that without including that on the application. That is something that I guess we'll modify in the future, asking about ethnicity, et cetera, so we can make sure we fulfill this, but it was not part of the original one. Supervisor Stevens.
Mr. Chair, I wasn't done. On that basis, because we don't know that we're actually following the law in this process, I move to table this for 2 meetings so that we can figure that out.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor to table the item for 2 meetings. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, there is a second. Discussion? Supervisor Cullen.
If we're following the state statute and the word, can you read the state statute again?
Yes. It is State Statute 251.03, parentheses 1. It says, members of the local Board of Health shall reflect the diversity of the community.
Diversity can also mean thought, and diversity of thought, these people probably qualify.
Supervisor Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So before I can even think about the tabling issue, because I do want, this question is related to that. How many members are on the Board of Health?
9.
9. So of all 9, because all 9 of them, you could address the diversity issue with all 9. So it doesn't necessarily have to be these people. Diversity could be all 9, right? Because it says members have to be diverse. So it doesn't have to be the people we're currently appointing, right?
That would make sense.
Okay, thank you.
Others? We have a motion and a second to table the item for 2 meetings. This is roll call. Please vote.
Yes, 10, no 16, absent 3. Motion fails.
Other comments, questions? Supervisor Peer?
I really appreciate some of the things that Supervisor Zorro brings up. And I don't know who made the other comment over here, but it's like a state of mind, this diversity thing. Because if you look around you right here tonight, considering diversity, do we represent Rock County? And we've been fighting that. That's why we have new committees. That's why we have new hires. And now you're going to take the Board of Health and make an issue out of it. Oh, let's start right here with the Board of Health. And I'm thinking, we certainly need to strive for all of that. And I think I'll be really glad someday, the way things are going, I don't know if I'll ever see it as old as I am, but I'd be glad when we can just assume that people are really doing the right thing and they do diversify when they make decisions and in their head and so on. I yearn for that. Thank you.
Supervisor Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you Supervisor Peer for bringing that up. And I think that there have been a few occasions where we've been accused of discrimination when we talk about addressing diversity issues and wanting to make our workforce more diverse and our committees more diverse. So I'd hate to be discriminating against people because we're trying to make our Board of Health more diverse. So thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Zorro.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I certainly do appreciate the comments from Supervisor Peer and Supervisor Cullen when we define diversity as a state of mind or diversity of thought. I think that goes a long way to improving our county's mission statement. But with that said, the other questions that I was asked to address was, what specific expertise or background does each appointee bring to the Board of Health that would set them apart from the other applicants?
Okay. We'll start with Rachel Bergstrom. She is the chair of the Department of Biology at Beloit College. She has extensive knowledge of infectious diseases, knowledge of social determinants of health. Those things I did not see in any other candidate. Eric Gressens, he's been a pharmacist and a pharmacy owner for over 25 years. He has a deep knowledge of how pharmacy and the pharmacy industry relates to health. He's been a board member for over 10 years, and he has board experience with the Edgerton Nursing Home. He was the only one with those qualifications. Deb Kolste has a BS in medical technology. She has hospital lab experience. She worked for Mercy Health Systems. She served on the State Council on Alcohol and Other Drugs of Abuse. She was the ranking member on the Health Committee for the State Assembly, and she's been on the Board of Health for 4 years, elected by her peers to be vice chair. Nicole McBride, registered nurse for 16 years at the Beloit Health System. She's a member of the Infectious Control and Prevention Committee, program director for the nurse residency program at the Beloit Health System, and the manager of the COVID testing and vaccine clinics at the Beloit Health System. Dr. Nowak has been a pediatrician for 40 years. He was the chief of the Department of Pediatrics. He's the president of the Janesville Medical Center, chief of staff of Mercy Hospital, and the medical director of Mercy Care. So I think each one of these bring things to the table that we did not see in the other candidates.
And were all applicants given equal consideration during the selection process? And if not, why were some applicants excluded from further evaluation?
Everybody was evaluated the same up until the end when we started making our final determinations. Everybody was in the same bowl, so to speak.
Did any external factors such as political affiliations or personal relationships play a role in your decision-making process?
None.
Did you consult with any experts or professionals in the public health field to inform your selection of the proposed appointees?
No, but Supervisor Peer, being the chair of the Health Department for a long time, provided his input on what the people that had served on the board brought to the table and what they were looking for regarding their operations.
And just one question left. Can you provide a detailed explanation of the criteria used to rank and select the proposed appointees from the pool of applicants?
We didn't really have a ranking system. We were looking for unique qualities, which I went through for the 5 that were selected, and how those fit into what we were looking for, like we were looking for a nurse, we were looking for a doctor, et cetera. So there was no official ranking system employed.
Thank you.
Other questions? Supervisor Cullen,
How many people in total applied?
10.
Thank you.
Others?
I call the question.
Okay, the question has been called. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a second. Okay, the question has been called, which will effectively end debate on the matter. So if you vote yes, we will end debate. If you vote no, we'll keep talking. Please vote. Roll call.
Supervisor Clayson?
I did it, oh.
25 yes, 1 no, 2 absent, 1 vacant.
Okay, that takes us back to the original motion. Lisa, if you'd please read that.
Motion is to approve is item 7A, appointments to the Board of Health.
This is roll call. Please vote.
Yes 20, no 6, 3 absent.
Motion passes. Next item, please.
Next item, item 8, recognition of county employees or others. We do not have any more this evening. Item 9, introduction of new resolutions or ordinances by supervisors for referral to appropriate committee.
Any supervisor with a new resolution, if you'd like to bring that forward at this time. Thank you. Thank you. Any others? Supervisor Sutherland, if you would please give a brief description of your proposed resolution.
Thank you, Chair. Whereas Rock County would establish a standing committee to serve as an environmental management system, known as EMS, for the purpose of interfacing with all county committees of efficiency energy use and the reduction of waste. And whereas Rock County would join Green Tier Legacy Communities, a volunteer alliance, and whereas the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, in partnership with Wisconsin Counties Association, League of Wisconsin Municipalities, 1,000 Friends of Wisconsin, 20 cities, 5 counties, numerous townships and villages have created a charter Green Tier Legacy Communities, a voluntary program designed to improve the quality of life and economic vitality of communities. Whereas members receive benefits such as sharing affirmative measures on efficient energy while reducing heat-trapping pollution, simplifying access to grants and funding for projects related to the goals of the charter. Whereas through this charter, Rock County would be eligible for grants and loans related to preparing, implementing, and improving wastewater, stormwater, drinking water, and wetlands issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Zorl?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I handed in 2 resolutions. The first resolution is one that you've already heard about back in January. It just didn't get any consideration in the staff committee, so in accordance with our board rules of procedure, I submitted it again with 5 signatures to guarantee that it comes to the board floor for a vote. What that does is it takes $500,000 worth of courtroom AV spending, and it swaps out some money with sales tax to free that money up. It was originally had the idea of going towards Rockhaven, but when it comes to the board floor, I would move to amend it to put it towards the Department of Public Works for the highway project. Second resolution is new, and that's called Resolution Look Ahead. The Look Ahead is actually an acronym for long-term optimization and organization for key infrastructure advancements, enhancements, and developments. And it does 3 things. Number 1, identify budget reductions amounting to $3.6 million within other departments, prioritizing non-essential, prioritizing the essential positions and expenses to ensure that DPW staff, that no DPW staff member is laid off and essential services are maintained. Number 2, it directs the county administrator to prepare a report outlining the proposed budget reductions, including a detailed analysis of the potential impact on affected departments and services, and present the report to the county board for approval. And number 3, upon approval of the reductions by the board, implement the necessary changes to reallocate the $3.6 million to fund the highway road construction capital projects without resorting to debt issuance. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else we miss? Next item, please.
Next item, item 10, reports. 10A, solar projects at the county farm.
Thank you. So I'm hoping my voice will hold up long enough for me to give an overview. I invited Alliant Energy, who has partnered with us here tonight, to give a little bit of overview of a solar project that half of it's already been approved by the board and the other half has been approved by the committee. It was not required due to the dollar amounts that come in front of the board. So we wanted to make sure that the board is very informed of what's going on with the solar project and how we got here. So what we originally started is the board passed a resolution to reduce our energy consumption by 25% by 2025, and to also look for renewables. And then it was later amended to also become carbon neutral by 2050. The board did, however, add one phrase in there, provided that it's economically feasible. That's pretty tricky with some of the renewables to accomplish. And in doing so, we first started and we worked with looking at putting solar on the jail. And because of the footprint, the jail was chosen because that's where our 24-hour operations are. And the best I could get out of that was a 16-year payback. And I had some aging roofs, so by the time I would get through supporting the roofs, replacing the roofs, and the extra maintenance, we had to come up with a better plan. The only way the solar at that time, that was like 2017, at that time it was through tax incentives. We don't get the tax incentives. So then myself, along with Supervisor Holman, we visited with Alliant Energy, and they had test sites set up trying to figure out what's the most effective type solar. I mean, they did it everything from, we looked at roofs over the parking garage to save on salt to, they've got all these different test plots and collecting data on what's most effective, from signage to, overhangs to roofs and things like that. So we thought, well, it would make sense to wait till we get their data collected at their cost. And then so we waited for that to go. In the meantime, we started reducing our usage and reduce our footprint. So before we put solar on, it would make sense to reduce your footprint so you don't need as large of a solar panel and your investment isn't as high. So we started down the road and we managed to follow that economically feasible status, and we've reduced our pollution. Back in 2021, we pulled numbers together and we were already at 17% in electric, KW, and we were at about 7% in gas. Since then, we've replaced several boilers. We replaced the courthouse boilers and had issues with new electronics as we had a cold morning one morning, but we replaced the boilers. We've got everything down to where we've actually reduced our footprint, and we've dropped from a pollution standpoint, we dropped at 2.5 million pounds of pollution just in that short amount of time, and reduced our operating costs at the same time. So we're continuing to do that. We're constantly, and I invested in software that's actually tracking it, so it'll do it automatically for us, not just on our gas, not just on our electric, but on our water as well. So we're tracking that really closely. Now the city requires, we got that nice retention pond. We're going to look at filterization. Supervisor Sutherland just introduced another resolution, which is right along the same lines we've looked at for water recycling and things of that nature as well. So again, looking at the solar, I looked at Alliant Energy, and Alliant Energy and myself and Bill, for example, have gone back many years, working from shared savings, and we've done everything we could to reduce our costs. So we did reach out to Alliant and say, hey, is there any pilot projects? Is there anything we could do to partner to get this to come in so we can be economically feasible? And he goes, yeah, I've got this customer hosted program and we can do. So we started looking at that, and it was based on our full usage, and we started looking at multiple sites, and I looked at the old Rock Haven site, we looked at the UW site, but it really made sense to try to focus on our 24-hour operations. We got our nursing home, we got our jail, we've got our 911. It really made sense to focus on that area. So then they came up with the criteria for the customer hosted requires the Public Service Commission has specific criteria, so it has to meet all of these. So none of that met. But what did meet was the field right next to DPW, the 400 some acres. And I said, I'm not even gonna try to get that farm field. Wasn't even gonna go there. And so we kept continuing to research, and then we found this 21-acre parcel next to Rock Haven is not virgin land, so they can't use it for test plots. They can't, it's sitting right there. It's right open to Highway 14. And so we pursued that, and that was all approved by the board. But that was a 10-acre site, and we can only go so large with that because it takes your usage, which is about 1.5 million kW. So that's what we did, and that was a 1.4 megawatt. Yeah. And then Bill said, hey, we've got this community program as well, and this will allow the staff, it allows the community customers to purchase solar blocks, the ones that can't put it on their home and they want to do it or they can't afford to do it or it's not feasible for them. They can buy blocks and go with it that way. The county can buy blocks if they so choose to. So that part we pulled this all together and that only required committee approval and that had done so. And so they'll start marketing that. But there's many members on the board that didn't know what we were working on solar, didn't know any of it. Some of them do remember some of it, and some are on my committee and they're aware of the whole thing. So we really wanted to let you guys know what this is about, so when you hear it in the community, that you're well aware of it. So just kind of want to know how we got to where we got. So this is our opportunity, one of our steps to get it more economically feasible and get where we're trying to accomplish. So I'll let Bill and Heidi take it from there.
Thank you, Brent. Again, Bill Alt, Local Account Manager with Alliant Energy, and Heidi Parker, our Program Manager for the Community Solar. We've got about a dozen slides that we'll zip through pretty quickly. The first two is really going to be talking about the company's overall solar initiative. Excuse me 1 second. Okay. And then I'll get into just a little bit of the history, although Brent touched on most of it, and then I'll turn it over to Heidi on the community solar. So Alliant Energy, our plans are by 2023 to reduce our fossil fuel generation of carbon dioxide emissions by 2020 50% of our 2005 levels. So that's a pretty aggressive goal, and we are well on our way. Equally important, by 2040, we plan on eliminating all coal from our generation fleet. Now, we will exceed that value or that time frame rather, in Wisconsin, because we only have 3 coal-fired units left in Wisconsin Power and Light, and they will be decommissioned within the next 3 to 4 years, possibly 5. The other data relates to our Iowa power plants. And then, of course, in 2050, we're aspiring to achieve a net zero carbon dioxide emissions from electricity we generate. So a lot more to come on that. That relies on some future concepts in the energy development world. Okay, next slide, please. Yes. Our Wisconsin Power and Light Alliant Energy's Clean Energy Blueprint consists of building 12 utility-scale projects to add more than 1,000 megawatts of solar by the end of this year. And that includes the 50-megawatt project that we call North Rock near Fulton, and that also includes our Paddock project, which is just north of Beloit. So 2 of the 12 that we're putting in of all Wisconsin Power and Light service territory are right here in Rock County. I'm pretty proud of that, pretty happy with that. In addition, we'll be adding some battery storage and some more connected energy networks to various sites throughout those 12 categories. Eventually, we'll, and I'm sorry, this is yep, this is correct. We had planned on retiring our Edgewater coal-fired power plant in Sheboygan this calendar year, but that was pushed back for other reasons. All right, let's get into the nuts and bolts of what we're here to talk about today. I was just recapping our center one there is our customer hosted. I'll get into that in a minute, and Heidi will discuss the community solar. We do have one other program which is a little different and not applicable to Rock County here. Next slide, please. Okay, most importantly, we were talking about the customer hosted site, and that one, the size of it was set by the electrical load of Rock County, all of their buildings. What I ended up doing is summing up the courthouse, the 2 jails, 1717 Center Avenue, Rock Haven, and came up with a megawatt of electricity that the county draws, and that's how we maximize this. As Brent originally said, we came to the county board last year and developed a 10-acre spot. But since then, Heidi's team came up with this other option of community solar. And so therefore, we asked the county, how can we fit more solar on the remaining land here? So on the right side will be our customer hosted. And then on the left side will be a much larger 2.25 megawatt solar facility, which is going to be the community solar. So both of them on the same property. 2 very separate electrical projects, but they will be going on at the same time. I think at this point, I'll turn it over to Heidi, and she can talk about the community solar and the benefits to Rock County and the rest of our customers at Wisconsin Power and Light. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Can everybody hear me okay? All right, good. Yes, so again, my name is Heidi Parker, and I am Program Manager of Community Solar, both in Wisconsin and in Iowa. So we are happy to be bringing Community Solar, our second garden, to Wisconsin. Our first one was located in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, and that was a megawatt. So very exciting that we get to bring another one because our customers are asking for it. So what is Community Solar? Well, this program was established because our customers want solar, and we want to be able to make it as accessible to as many of our customers as possible. Some customers may be installing it themselves, but it doesn't work for everybody. Some people may be living in condominiums, might not be able to install solar themselves, might not be able to do it themselves because of budget reasons. So this program is that Alliant Energy builds and maintains a solar garden, and we break apart the portions into 250-watt blocks, so they're called solar blocks. And we sell subscriptions to those blocks. So once we launch our campaign here in 1 month, we'll be allowing customers to enroll or to purchase those solar blocks for up to 100% of their annual usage. So we take a look at their last 12 months. I'm kind of jumping ahead slides here, but we take a look at the last 12 months, what their kilowatt hour usage is, and we allow customers to purchase up to as many solar blocks in that equivalent without going over. Well, we're limited by the tariff, can't go over 100%. I'm jumping ahead. I got more details in the next slide. But the energy itself goes back onto our grid. So it goes back into the community where we power businesses and homes, but it doesn't go back to each individual home. But what does happen is for those customers who subscribe to the solar blocks, we measure, when the site is operational, we measure the solar production and we issue a solar production credit off of those subscribers' electric bill. So based on each solar block that you purchase, you get that solar credit off of your utility bill. I'm sure we'll have questions about that, but I'll come back here in a second. So, best kept secret, right? So how much is a solar block? Well, right now it's approximately $350, and that is per 250 watt portion of the 2.25 megawatt facility. So for math purposes, 4 solar blocks equals 1 kilowatt. So if you looked at solar in your own homes before, that's the equivalent. So again, what goes into the cost of the block? So we take the cost, all costs go into the blocks, all costs of the facility, the construction, the interconnection, the marketing, and the maintenance, all goes into the price of the block, and it's divided, and then it's divided across all of them. One thing is that this is non-rate impacting. So again, this is all paid for by the subscribers alone. So it doesn't go back to ratepayers. Okay. Let's see, actual costs. The energy is delivered back to the grid. As I mentioned before, these goes back and is used back onto the grid to power up the community. So the longevity. So how long are you going to be receiving bill credits? Customers receive bill credits for 20 years. So once it's operational, that is day 1 of year 1, and you'll receive a monthly solar production bill credit based on the actual solar production of the month before. So it's going to be ongoing for, again, 20 years. So the bill credit rate is established and is added to our tariffs, and we guarantee we'll set a floor credit rate that we guarantee that we won't fall below. But the credit rate is analyzed every year, and it may increase, it may decrease a little, but again, we guarantee that it won't fall below that floor number. Let's see. So what's going to happen in a month? So in a month, we're going to be doing a very large enrollment campaign. We're going to end up sending direct mail letters out to Rock County and some of the surrounding counties. There will be emails, there will be radio campaigns, social media, community meetings like this, which I'm doing the road show, so this is hopefully not the last time you see me. But what are we setting up? So at the time that we launch our marketing campaign, we're going to have a lot of great tools for our customers. Online, we'll have a solar calculator where you can enter in your last 12-month kilowatt hours in order to determine how many solar blocks, the maximum number of solar blocks that you can purchase. But again, that's the maximum. You can choose whatever fits your budget. It could be 1, it could be 18. It really is flexible for you. We'll have web pages dedicated to both residential and business customers. We have robust FAQs specifically about this site alone. You can go out there now and read more about the Fond du Lac project and even our current Cedar Rapids project in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. We have online enrollment forms, and you're able to, and this is newer functionality this time, where you can even purchase to donate solar blocks and those bill credits to other Alliant Energy Electric customers or to businesses or nonprofit organizations. It's something that we are happy to do and provide that service. That was a lot of information, so I'm sure you guys have questions, but this is our website. This is where you can find basic information of community solar. There is also a place where you can get added to the wait list, and you'll be informed of when all of this is available. So with that, there's my contact information. You can also email communitysolar@alliantenergy.com. So I think, do we get to open it up for questions, or it's up to you? No?
Sure. If anybody has a question, please raise your hand. Supervisor Bryan?
Say I buy a block
Yes.
and I'm gonna move to a different state. Can I sell it, or do I have to give it back to you folks, or how does that work?
That is a great question, and we do have a lot in place. So if you buy a solar block and you do move, let's say you are moving and you're within Wisconsin and you remain an Alliant Energy customer, electric customer, you can keep those bill credits. This is available to all of our territory, all of our electric customers within our territory. If you do move out of the territory, or if you're no longer a customer of Alliant Energy, you can receive a prorated refund. Or you can sell it, or you can transfer those to neighbors, friends, the new homeowners, what have you.
Or donate it to a charity of your choice.
Yes, yes. Yes.
Thank you. Is there any compensation made for someone who is really on the ball with this, and maybe they even have solar panels already, and they have maybe a wood burning outfit that goes into the furnace and auxiliary heats the house? It's almost like, if you're not watching here, you'd be, because you got on the ball too quick, then you wouldn't get credit for being able to get as many blocks, let's say.
So if you own your own solar, we do take that into account of what your annual usage is. And again, I will say that that's at time of enrollment, and we don't go back and see you in 5 years, 10 years, and check if your usage matches. So I probably shouldn't say that too loud, but shh, don't tell anybody. Does that answer your question a little bit? I'm not sure I answered that.
A little bit. I'm thinking of a guy who lives down the block from me. He's in the tree cutting business.
Yeah.
And he eats pretty much by just that wood, but then he might be interested in something like that. So how would he come out on that?
Again, it's flexible enough, so if he has his own solar, you have to be able to have, let me see, the minimum amount of kilowatt hours is 441 kilowatt hours in the last 12 months. That's the minimum amount. 441. Sorry. Oh, do we take questions from the gallery too? Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. A couple questions. I investigated going into solar, and because of my age, it wasn't really a good idea to do that. But my question is, I'm not familiar with, is there such a thing as, we see outages of many parts of the country because of weather. What bearing does this have on your susceptibility to outages? Is it the same, different, or can you explain that, please?
Outages? I don't know. Yeah, okay.
I'll take that
Yep.
one.
Volley.
So this particular solar garden is just simply going to be connected to our utility grid. And, you know, outages are there's different outages, right? If you had an outage to the north side of town, which can't remember ever happening, where we have this solar facility, the safety requirements within the generation side of the solar is going to trip it offline. If you have a down line associated with this system that it is from the property along Highway 14 back to our substation on Kennedy Road, any problems with there, it's going to trip it offline. We don't want generation to go back out to the line that would workers be working on or repairing during another outage. So I think to get to the root of your question is a solar facility like this, or even on your home, going to benefit someone during an outage? The answer would be no, unless that facility has battery storage related to it.
Thank you.
Got it.
Thank you. A quick question. Do you anticipate that this would, if people invest in this and give Alliant their money, do you anticipate that they'll pay less for their energy or about the same? Or are they actually, will it actually cost them more?
No, that's a really good question. So it does reduce your electric bill based on actual solar production. Now, the bill credit is not the same amount as what your electric rate is, so you will always have some kind of electric bill, but again, it's based on actual solar production. So my example would be August, and you have really low usage, but the solar production is really high. There might be a point where you have a zero and actually an excess of solar production credit rate. What the tariff allows us to do is carry that over to the following month, then to the following month. It ends up equaling itself out. The payback we're estimating right now I have estimated numbers up here. So the estimated payback right now for residential customers is 10 years.
Supervisor Sweeney?
Thank you. You had mentioned battery storage. Are there any battery storage facilities planned for Rock County?
Not at the present time. We have two in development, some very large-scale ones, one up in Sheboygan at our currently existing power plant area. And I'll be honest with you, I forget which one of the other 12 utility-scale ones we're planning on putting battery storage there. But the two in Rock County, at the present time, that is not in the calculation, but it always could be. It's just that we're starting with two of them, and they're not at these two in Rock County.
Could you explain the process for battery storage?
Sure. When the solar panels are receiving the energy from the sun, they are putting energy into the grid. If you have a battery system next to it, it is going to put the energy into that battery until the battery is full. And then at that point in time, it would stick any excess back out onto the system. In a situation there where we would want to then drain that battery during non-production times, i.e. at nighttime, that's when the battery would then be drained, and then you'd start that process back over again the following day when the sun lights up.
Thank you for reminding me what I learned in 5th grade, but the makeup of the batteries, are they lithium ion? Are they buried? Are they above ground?
They are above ground, and I can't answer that. Lithium ion is a popular one, but it seems like that battery industry is changing daily. There's something out there that someone is working on, something different every day, and sky's the limit. That's where the future is finding a cost-effective, environmentally friendly, long-lasting battery, and that's not only for our business, but vehicle business, telephones, everything. That's where the future is, and I think that's where the world will be a nicer place once we get to that level.
And I'm told lithium ion and water don't mix, correct?
Correct.
So a buried lithium ion in a field by a nursing home probably isn't a good idea.
Correct. We don't have that on the plans for this project. And
Is it in the contract?
Battery for these projects? Not that no.
I can't say for sure. We use the agreement with the county here as a standard agreement with all other customer-hosted projects, which we do not have any batteries at any other ones, but quite frankly, I don't know. It might be in there. I don't know for sure. We've got contracts with other communities. I don't know the answer to that.
I would ask Brent to double check that and make sure that that is part of that. Do you charge the same, or is your net the same from the either of the solar projects on the county farm? In other words, are you have more return with the community solar than the one that we planned a while ago?
They're both based on, well, they're going to be built at the same time. I'm not sure how to answer that question either. I mean, we have a anticipated payback of approximately 10 years
Right.
for the community solar based on input from the customers who participate. The other one, I don't know what the payback is per se from our standpoint. I mean, we obviously are entered into a pretty good agreement with the county as far as our annual lease payments for the customer hosted side. And that one's a little smaller project in scale, so I'd have to say that that payback to us is probably a lot longer than the community solar.
And my last question, is Alliant in the subcontracting to build the site, or is somebody else building the site and you are taking over management and?
Correct. Sunvest will be the builder of this project for us, and we will own and maintain and operate it afterwards.
Okay, so you're buying out the contract from Sunvest?
I'll call it more of a joint development process because we are providing the solar panels. They are providing the installation, the engineering, the coordination, and things like that.
Okay, so the terms of the contract, there are several terms that haven't been mentioned yet, but the terms of the contract are transferable, Brent?
Pardon?
So the contract are transferable from Sunvest to Alliant?
Well,
There's no language in there as far as transferable from Sunvest to Alliant.
you know, we're hiring Sunvest to do the building work. We're not transferring the ownership or anything like that to Sunvest.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So Supervisor Sweeney, just to answer your question, there's no language of batteries in our lease agreement. And I did want to mention that, you know, prior to all the approvals we had on here, I did take it through Rockhaven Health Services Committee. I took it to the Resident Council. I took it through Ag and Extension, Land Conservation, and General Services before we got our approvals that we needed beforehand as well. And I think Supervisor Snyder had a question.
Thank you. I just wondered how often you pay the $350. Is it monthly, yearly?
One time. I'll come to the mic. Sorry, I took that mic. So the $350 is a one-time upfront payment. You can pay it all in one lump sum, or you can spread it out over 12 months. You don't start receiving a bill credit until the site is operational and payment is in full.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time tonight and all of your time that you spend here at this facility on all the other county stuff. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep. Just,
Oh, yeah. I'm sure Brent Cox is working on it. I was gonna ask him, but I thought he might.
Next item, please.
next item is item 10B, Rock County Sheriff's Office Correctional Emergency Response Team, CERT.
Got too much stuff on the agenda.
While they're getting set up, I just want to say something real quick. In conjunction with a lot of the new supervisors that haven't had a chance to learn much about the sheriff's office, we're trying to have some of our specialty units and some other stuff come up and be able to do short presentations for you. We won't be long, we're not going to drag this out, but just to cover different aspects of our agency and what we do. So I encourage questions, everything else. But I'm going to turn it over to Dan and Jordan here. We're going to lead the parade while Officer Syme got all decked out in what they have to wear in emergency circumstances. So here you go.
Thank you, Sheriff. While they're getting that up, first of all, we'd like to thank Chairman Bostwick, Board of Supervisors, and staff for allowing us to be here tonight. I am Correctional Officer Dan Banks, Correctional Officer Jordan Hillis, and Correctional Officer Brandon Syme. We are here to represent what is called the Correctional Emergency Response Team, or CERT for short. Yeah, go ahead and click it there, Hillis. Okay. Our team currently consists of about 15 correctional officers. We practice about 4 times a year, with one of those practices being for our TASER and pepper ball recertification that every member of our CERT team has to go through and maintain that annual certification in order to be able to use those tools. We train in cell extractions, room clearing, and properly securing a person into custody. CERT is used primarily for riot situations, hostage situations, armed persons, and combative inmates. When we have a situation at the jail that arises, a supervisor is the one that will declare that situation to where CERT needs to be moved in. And the reason for that is, as you can see, Officer Syme here has our protective equipment on, our helmet, our chest pads, leg pads. We also have gas masks that we will use if we need to use chemical agents at all to help protect the officers going into that situation. Any activation that we go on are recorded on our body cameras, and we also have a camcorder that we take with us that we will designate a person to record. So that way we get multiple angles of the situation. We also have cameras in our sections, if that's where we're going, that will also, we can review the situation on. After our activation or incident, we will complete a incident report both in the jail management system that we use and for our own CERT records. Next slide there, Hillis. Okay, thank you. We were established in 2010. We train in defensive tactics and is used in dangerous and emergency situations. The most common situations that we are called out for is cell extractions. An example of that would be if we needed to move individuals for whatever purpose and they were refusing to move. We would be called in to get that inmate moved out of that area. I believe I mentioned earlier, we're trained in non-lethal tactics, including taser and pepper ball. Obviously, our goal in every situation that we're called out to is compliance. Self-compliance, I guess is what I would call it, from the inmate. Usually, our show of force, we march in and we're dressed in our protective equipment, usually results in that inmate complying and surrendering. We can go next slide there. Just some pictures of the team practicing. And then Hillis, if you want to go over numbers.
So this next slide is our yearly activations over the last 10 years. 2013 up to 2022, we average about 4 activations a year, give or take, just depending. And our last slide is some tools that we use. There's a variety of them as far as handcuffs, shackles, shields, gas masks, OC spray. We have some restraint systems shown there. There's a restraint bed, restraint chair, and then there's a new restraint system called the wrap, which is a nice tool to have. So that is it. Yes, sir.
Thank you for what you do. I have a question. You have on average 4 yearly activations.
Correct.
When the new jail is fully up and operational, do you anticipate those going down?
I do. It'll be nice having more room. We can separate people better, having more space. We'll have more resources, so I anticipate and I hope they'll go down.
In conjunction with that, part of the reason for some of the aspects of the jail is to create the space that Hillis has referred to, but also it's a little better atmosphere. But keep in mind, these are still people that are incarcerated. They're put into jail for a reason, typically because they can't do as well in society as we'd like them to initially. That's kind of where they have 4 activations, which doesn't seem like much, but typically those are for significantly violent type people or people that are not going to go along with the program no matter what else we try. We don't activate them or have them put all that stuff on without a serious reason.
Another question. You said after an incident, you write up 2 reports. Do you kind of, I guess the way to say is, do you review your game films to learn things?
We do. We have the 4 practices a year, and generally what we'll do at one of our practices, we'll go through our video from our call-outs and pick things maybe we should change, things we don't need to change, talk about it, stuff like that. So we definitely do use it for a training opportunity. Yes, ma'am.
So you have 4 activations a year. How many folks do you have on average housed at the jail? So I'm trying to get an idea of, so you have 4 activations a year in relation to how many people you actually have a year there.
So, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
So on average, about 345 to about 410 on average.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, correct. That does not count the individuals that are out on our diversion program, which are not housed within the confines of the jail. Those are the people that are on bracelet and serve their time outside of the jail.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
How long does it take to put on that equipment?
5 minutes. About 5 minutes. Usually what'll happen is once we're activated, the team leader will be briefing the team on the situation that's going on, and then we help each other get suited up, is what we call it.
When we're called, we were already needed about 10 minutes ago, so we try to get it done as fast as possible.
Yeah. And I would like to make myself clear as well. We are only activated after every other option has been exhausted. Typically, supervisors are at the scene, multiple other officers are at the scene, trying to verbally de-escalate the situation. And then when it's not being able to be de-escalated, that's when we're called in.
Is there any way that you can email this presentation? Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. No worries.
Next item, please.
Next item, 10C, strategic plan presentation.
Oh, back last spring, a recommendation that came out of the Blue Ribbon Commission, which was chaired by Supervisor Brian Knutson, and as a result of the Hugh Life study that was done in 2021, identified the need to have a countywide strategic plan. So in 2022, last year, we did an RFP and ended up selecting Baker Tilly and ended up doing a variety of things. And if you remember September 10, I do remember September 10, Saturday, down at the Dr. Daniel Hay Williams Resource Center, Rock County Resource Center, we had a in-house discussion of where we're at. So this document that's in your packet is the result of a lot of input from community people, from internal county staff, management, and then you all. So I'm gonna turn it over to Chris Strom, who was at that September 10th session with you all, and he's gonna run through some brief highlights, and then we'll have a little discussion. So.
Hi, everyone, and yes, thank you for having us back. Yeah, for those that don't remember, my name is Chris Strom, Senior Consultant with Baker Tilly. It's been a pleasure working with you guys as we're developing the first strategic plan for the county. So you have a copy of the, is this still on? You have a copy of the draft strategic plan in your packet. And so I'm just going to run through some kind of high-level overviews, won't read it to you word for word, but this is up for just a presentation at the moment. There's still some next steps that need to be done with the strategic plan. And so first and foremost, the document has a general description of the county, a brief overview of the strategic planning process. The next section of the report covers the mission, values, and vision, which is adopted by the county through the policies and procedures, through the county's administrative policies and procedures manual. Then the report dives into the internal stakeholder phase. So that is when we met with all 29 of you individually, just to understand the county's current state. What are the current challenges? What are the strengths? Where are their weaknesses? And where do you see some opportunities available for the county going forward? We also met with 23 elected and appointed department heads. And from those conversations, the major themes that came out were mental health, the employee recruitment and hiring. County supervisors have the ability to be fiscally responsible. County staff is very effective and responsive. and there were need for internal and external communication improvements. So that kind of set the land for where the county internal focused stakeholders felt where the county was good, where there were some weaknesses and opportunities for improvement, which that then led into the external stakeholder phase. We administered a survey, a non-scientific survey, but one that we just wanted to get input from the community members. From that, we had 802 responses. And in the Appendix A of the report, you can see some of the analysis behind all of that. Also, part of the external stakeholder engagement piece was facilitating community focus groups. And so we interviewed collectively about 40 people over 6 topic areas. Those topic areas were health and human services, community social groups, public safety and emergency management, public works, transportation, infrastructure, the business community, and agriculture and land conservation. And so on page 6 of the report, you'll see a summary of, again, those kind of major takeaways from each of those discussion items, those discussion groups. So from taking all that in consideration, like Randy was mentioning, that brought us then to the workshop in September. Everybody remembers the workshop, very long day, but we learned a lot from that, and as directed by the county supervisors, we took what we heard during that day, took what we heard from the internal, external stakeholder engagement, and pardon me, making sure I captured everything, and sent out a survey to you to then get your feedback on developing the actual goals and objectives for the strategic plan. So as a result, I'm starting on page 8. You'll see the goals that were identified through that exercise. So going back to the workshop, as a reminder, so goals are that kind of 40,000-foot aspirational topical items. And so what was identified was public safety, infrastructure, environmental and agricultural sustainability, community health and well-being, organizational excellence, and quality of life were the 5 goal areas. And then also found on page 8, you'll see kind of a summary of what each of those topic areas mean. So then, boiling things down a little bit further, coming to that 10,000-foot level, are the objectives. Those objectives you'll find on page 9 in the strategy map, which I believe you've seen a copy of before. Those are the more actionable items. Now, not quite to where the task items are per se, but I'll get to that in a moment. But these were part of the survey that was sent out, and for each goal area, there's about 3 or 4 objectives, which again, by achieving each of those objectives, you will then successfully achieve the goal area. Which kind of then brings me down to the next piece and our next steps. The final part of the strategic planning process is now identifying those initiatives. So we'll be working with Josh and Randy on how to go about identifying the initiatives. These initiatives are now those 100-foot level. What are those specific action items that help achieve the objectives? So we have a worksheet that kind of helps vet through these things. Initiatives will include accountability, so who is assigned certain tasks to help, again, achieve, certain task item to help achieve an objective. The timeline to have that objective achieved, and a way of reporting back out on the progress of those things. Once those, that kind of concludes on where we've been, where we're going next. This is the final piece, and I guess I'd just like to just kind of finally add, we understand this is the county's first strategic plan, and I like to kind of compare this process to, going forward, compare it to what your annual budgeting process would be. Is you're reviewing, where things are at, where you're spending money, where you find areas that you need to spend money on that you might not have been before, where you shouldn't be spending money on any longer. And this is really very similar in that sense. After this, once you start that initial process of where we're at now, of developing the first strategic plan, going forward, it makes it much easier to then kind of review, revise, and you'll see in the conclusion of the strategic plan some suggestions of how to go about annually reviewing, updating the plan. So, Josh or Randy, did you have anything you'd like to add?
So just here again, this is an informational presentation report at this time, and we'll be coming back to you with your reaction and follow-up as far as our next steps, which would, if the board agrees at a further discussion at a future meeting to continue with the strategic plan, our next step would be then directing staff to come up with some strategic initiatives, and we would outline what the process would be for that. So any questions from, I guess, Chris at this time on what you had in your packet?
Supervisor Knutson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just would like to say thank you for all the work and the assistance that you gave to us. This has been a long journey. We should have had a strategic plan a long time ago, and we're finally at this point now. I think it's a good thing into the future if we build on this and keep working on it. Every year, it's one more way that we can make Rock County truly an organization of excellence. But thank you very much and great job.
Thank you for having us back. We know that the workshop was a lot, and so appreciate that. It's been a pleasure working with you guys.
Supervisor Towns.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The workshop day was stressful, and it kind of went south at the end, as I recall. And I think it's okay to have an idea what your vision is and what your mission is. But this is not like, but I think we need to be careful about hemming ourselves in with specific objectives and goals. We are not a private sector business, and where the owner or owners have an idea where they want the group to go to. We are an elected body, and we're given our charge by the people who voted for us. And the number one charge that I saw never even made it in here, and I know I've voiced it many times, and it was about tax levy accountability. And so I just want to say that I'm not totally sold on this, which some of you might know already, because I'm not actually. Counties are charged with state law. We have a pretty clear pathway of what we're supposed to be involved in, and what we're supposed to do with the money we're given. So I'm not sure that writing our own plan totally out, and it makes me a little nervous about having a possible steering committee that'll oversee it and make sure that everything we do is according to the plan. Because I don't think that we answer to the steering committee. I think we answer to the people who elected us. And so I guess I've said enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor Zorl.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I echo the same comments as Supervisor Towns. Initially, I thought, hey, having a strategic plan is a really good idea. I mean, it would be stupid not to have a strategic plan, right? And then when I kind of think about it a little bit more and kind of go from, conceptual to in reality, I start thinking, maybe I have some concerns. We're all elected to 2-year terms, and strategic plans typically are like a 5-year period. So when one new board comes in every 2 years, they're not bound by the decisions of the prior board. And for that reason, it seems a little bit silly to try and come up with a plan that you're not even going to be bound if the board's going to change 3 times in 5 years. But with that said, I think there's some really super good aspects that have come out of this. In fact, instead of actually focusing more on a strategic plan, I'd like to focus more on the surveying of the residents, so we have an idea what our constituents want, so we know what to focus on, and we can sort of adapt our plan to what our constituents want. And I was looking at page 48 of 74, and it says, overwhelmingly, respondents requested a regular newsletter with both email and mail options. I've been working on that for months. I finally found the solution, and any day now I'm going to start a 30-day beta test. It's going to cost money, though, approximately $125,000. I'm wondering if my fellow supervisors would be interested in doing what our residents ask. But in theory, it's a company that's whitelisted with all the email providers, and we would have access to two-way communication access with all the constituents within our specific geographic districts, and we could actually pull them. So if we had a vote coming up at a county board meeting in the future and we want to know what our residents think, we can shoot them an email, even if they never opted in, and say, here's what's happening, what do you think? And so my question for the rest of the board is, do you think it's worth spending $125,000 on?
Point of order. We've had the presentation. Randy said we're going to follow up on that and discuss this at a different time. Can we defer this discussion until then?
Yes. But your point is well taken, Supervisor Zorro. Other comments, questions? Seeing none. Thank you very
Thank you
much,
again for your
Chris.
time
Appreciate
and
it.
for working with us. It's been a pleasure.
Next item, please.
Next item, 11A2, carryover of 2022 budget appropriations to 2023.
Moved by Supervisor Mohini, seconded by Supervisor Fox. Supervisor Mohini?
Sherry?
So the purpose of this resolution is to carry over the remaining budget for goods, services, projects that were included in the 2020 budget, but for various reasons were not received or completed by the end of the year. So it could be a lot of back orders, multi-year projects, but for various reasons were not received or completed by 12/31/22. So, under generally accepted accounting principles, or GAAP, we need to have this carryover resolution to move the remaining budget for these things from 2022, so that budget will be reduced and added to the 2023 budget. Any questions?
Supervisor Zorro? Oh, were you moving it?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a really large resolution with a lot of numbers and a lot of departments involved and a lot of complexity, and I think I'd like to vote for some parts, but not other parts. So one of the things I was thinking about was dividing the question, and if we were to do that, we could ensure that each line item is given the attention it deserves, even enabling a thorough evaluation of each project's merits and funding needs. And we could prioritize the most important projects and allocate resources more effectively to meet the needs of our county. And we could give each board member an opportunity to express their concerns about individual line items without the need to vote against the entire resolution. So with that said, Mr. Chair, I move to divide the question and consider each department line item in the resolution separately for voting.
So this resolution isn't about funding or funding sources. These are items that were in the 2022 budget. They are funded in most of the cases, the county is already obligated to pay for these. It's just an accounting, financial statement, technical thing that we have to do. The funding, the approval of these projects, that horse left the gate over a year ago. So this is just a technical accounting thing to reduce the 2022 budget, add it to the 2023 budget. Again, for financial statement purposes, for items that are already been we've already been, the POs have been issued, we're financially obligated to pay.
What happens to the money if we vote no?
Then we can't meet our obligations for these projects. So with the passing of this resolution, the budget goes in 2022 to an assigned fund balance. And then the 2023 budget is changed to reflect these carryovers. Like I said, the funding sources, the projects have already been approved. That horse left the gate a year ago.
Is it fair to say that some of these projects are in the process, whereas other projects haven't started at all yet?
There may be one or two that haven't started for some reason, but again, this is just the technical financial statement process.
Which ones would be the ones that haven't started yet? Because I would divide the question based on those.
I did not bring that information with me, that they're all in some stage of happening. Ordered.
the question.
That would be out of order.
Supervisor Podzilny, let's let Supervisor Zorel continue with his questions for Ms. Oja. Supervisor Zorel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Obviously, I don't think we want to pull money from anything that's already in the middle of the project. But I'm just kind of looking at this from the perspective of, I know we need to find some money for our Department of Public Works and our highway workers. So what I'm getting at here is in this list of all this spending, how much of it, which items are not yet started that potentially, if the board wished to, they could reallocate to that.
I don't believe there's any projects that can be, at this point in the game, reallocated.
I withdraw my motion.
Other comments, questions? Seeing none, this is roll call. Please vote.
Twenty-six yes, 0 no, 2 absent, 1 vacant.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Next item, item 11B1, awarding the contract for renovation of the probate vault.
Moved by Supervisor Bryan, seconded by Supervisor Wilson. Supervisor Bryan.
Do we,
Is Brent here? He can explain it more.
we need to clarify the version that we're working on?
So I'll clarify if that's okay. So you have several versions in front of you. The initial version that was in the packet that went to the General Services Committee and in the Finance and County Board agendas at the beginning of the week was a version that had two purchases in it, and both were funded by sales tax. One was the renovation of the probate vault itself, and the other was purchase of AV equipment. So that was those were sales tax funded, as was in the budget. Then General Services Committee made an amendment. That amendment would change funding sources to switch out the sales tax for the AV to ARPA funded. And you saw that version with the amendments that was then put in the Finance and the County Board of Packets subsequent to that. And then at Finance tonight, the Finance Committee made an amendment to go back to the original version that would use entirely sales tax for those those two parts of the project. So the version in front of you, the motion and the second, is the original version that funds both parts of that project with sales tax. So just to be clear about which one you're looking at. So there should be in front of you a version that does not have the amendment in it. There's no red language, no underlined language. The original version that is sales tax funded only.
Okay, so just an overview of the project. If you guys remember, we were renovating the former law library along with the former probate vault into hearing rooms. We came in over budget, so we re-separated them. We did the law library in 2022, which is just about complete coming up. And now the probate we budgeted for 2023, and this is what that's doing is converting the empty probate vault into a hearing room.
Questions, comments? Supervisor Zorro.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I sat down for at least a good part of 3 hours speaking with Dewey about the highway projects. So what does that have to do with this? Well, because the version that we originally had allocated $131,274.47, pulling that from ARPA as opposed to sales tax. So there's a little bit of a debate as to, is that something that's allowed or not? And in front of you, you have a packet with examples of what other counties are doing around the country. It's color-coded. So the yellow refers to all courtroom-related projects that are being funded with ARPA that are not the lost revenue provision version of ARPA. The salmon or red type color references just the projects that reference jail inmates in courtrooms. And then the green color represents everything that is AV. And I did quite a bit of research and learned some new things as part of this research project. What I learned is one of the concerns that I know our county administrator had in terms of using this project for ARPA was that this was a project that we thought of in our heads that we were going to do before the pandemic started. And in our heads, we were thinking this would be a good way to have some AV equipment in the courtrooms so that our jail inmates could attend court virtually, remotely, so you didn't actually have to transport them back and forth. And because it deals with jail inmates as opposed to the general public, and because we thought of it in our heads, at least prior to the pandemic started, that it would not apply for ARPA. However, you can see there's numerous precedent around the entire country for doing exactly that. In fact, not only are other counties taking the AV piece of the equipment and paying for it with ARPA, they're taking the entire courtroom. You know, you look at the first example there, King County, Washington. King County District Court has a substantial backlog of court cases due to COVID. Well, that's what we have. That's what our judges said. Hey, we need more courtrooms to deal with all this backlog. So not only do I think we can use ARPA funds for the AV portion, I think we can use it for the entire resolution, and I think we should do that. Our neighboring county, just to the south of Rock County, Winnebago in Illinois, guess what? They're using ARPA to do exactly that. They have inmates, and they had to spend money on technology. In this case, it was laptops, so that they could attend their court cases remotely. So I think it's a good idea. This is one way that we can fund our highway project without having to raise taxes, without having to cut any services to our residents. I think it makes sense. I think if you have a better idea, you can certainly propose it, but this is really a great idea so that nobody gets hurt. So with that, I would move to pay for the entire project with ARPA, save the sales tax money, and allocate that to the highway construction budget.
Is there, that's an amendment?
Yes.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, there is a second. Discussion? Supervisor Towns?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I know that there seems to be a difference of opinion what's allowed with ARPA funds. And do you have a concern that we would be, get our hands slapped for doing that?
Well, I'll start, and if Sherry has some comments, she can answer too. So, I mean, you've seen my note. My note is in the resolution. I'm not going to read that. I think this is the third time this has been in front of us. So, my perspective hasn't changed. To be clear about what my role is here, right? You pay me to give you my advice, and I've done so. And if you want to make a different decision, you can. I think what I note in my note is that, is it likely that the federal government will come in and slap our hands for doing it? Probably not. I mean, the auditing that they would do directly, they probably don't have a whole lot of resources to do that, right? So do I think there's a high risk involved if you were to do that? Probably not. But as I also note, that's not my call. My call is to tell you what I think if it's eligible or not. And I think that it is not for the reasons I've said, and I'm not going to go through those again. I know Sherry in her note has a different perspective on our own auditors and what they might decide that is different than the federal auditors. But I guess if you have any comments.
Yep, so be clear, the federal and state typically do not come and directly audit us or other agencies. That's what the single audit is for. That's why we're required to have independent auditors come in. So that being said, a little background about myself. For many years, I worked in the highly respected State Legislative Audit Bureau, where I audited agencies. Most of the time I was supervising those agencies up to, agents had $2 billion worth of expenditure. So I'm super familiar with the single audit requirements. And then the last 16 years here. And Josh has had similar experience. So between the two of us, we have over 50 years of relatable experience with sorting through federal regulations. Now, the list Supervisor Zorro gave you, I just took a quick look at it. I don't believe it said what category of ARPA funding was being used for those expenditures. It could have been lost revenue. We could use lost revenue, but we don't have any more of that revenue left. So under the category that Supervisor Zorro has mentioned, I do not believe that is allowable. I think it's too risky, and I would be required to disclose that to our auditors, who are the ones that audit these programs. I'm required to sign a letter that says, this is the truth, nothing but the truth. I swear that, we followed all the rules. So I would have to disclose that and let them determine. So as Josh said, you can, fund the project, vote however you would like. But again, over 50 years of experience here is saying it's a little risky, so.
Follow up, if I might.
Supervisor Towns, yes.
Thank you for that clear explanation. I don't know, and I think when we do hire people to give us advice, and it's been well-researched, we might be wise to find ourselves drinking upstream from the herd on this one. I just think that we maybe need to listen to that advice.
Supervisor Farrell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I fully support using sales tax, and I take it very much to heart. I also was a CPA that ethics are important. When I do my tax return, like most people, I fill it out the way I think is correct. I don't worry. I don't say, well, now am I going to get caught doing this? I do it the correct way. If you're a CPA or like Sherry, you have a code of ethics to give advice that is legal and ethical. That's what I take. As Sherry has stated, we have many years of experience between our county administrator and our finance director, and all due respect to Supervisor Zorro, he's not his qualifications don't even come close to that. So I guess I'd take the route of being more cautious and accept their advice and use the sales tax. I don't want it, you know, and I don't really, I mean, we don't look at what other counties do. I mean, we say that's a precedent. It's not a precedent, it's what they're doing. We don't have to follow what other county, we don't know all the circumstances involved. So I fully support using sales tax. Thank you.
Supervisor Clayson?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to first applaud Supervisor Zorrell for attempting to find a really good solution, and it seems logical. My biggest concern is that we have three, at least, iterations of public record indicating we don't think this is really the intention. And that seems even riskier to me when we have that much public record to make a decision that goes against what we think is likely to not be the intention of that funding.
Supervisor Stevens?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Running an organization that actually has received federal ARPA dollars, I've hired someone to stay away from vague. He said, the last thing I want is to have to deal with having to find out what happens when we've done something and we're not absolutely sure if that was something that we should have done. I've received a lot of advice from people at the WEDC, Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, the SBDC. You folks have had the SBDC come in front of you to talk about the work that they're doing for us, and you all were very happy with the report they gave you, so I believe you would trust any advice that they gave you about ARPA money. And I've consulted with them, and they've all advised me to stay away from vague when it comes to using federal ARPA dollars. So I am going to encourage my fellow county board supervisors to please take the advice of our county administrator and Sherry. Thank you.
Supervisor Wilson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to invoke a power higher than the county administrator or Sherry and invoke my dead mother, who often advised me, if Johnny jumped off the bridge, would you follow him? I think that the listing is interesting, and I again would thank Mr. Zorrell for his efforts to try to find a creative solution. But I think that following the guidance that Supervisor Farrell has offered in terms of the ethical direction to go is the correct direction to go.
Supervisor Zorrell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I caution everybody that, you know, to talk about getting caught or ethics, I mean, I think that is perhaps unethical or misleading in and of itself because it implies that this is something we're not allowed to do, in which case I believe we truly are allowed to do it. I mean, you've got 39 examples in front of you of other counties that, I mean, who's right or wrong? I mean, is Rock County the one that's right and these other 39, they're all wrong? I mean, you think of a scale, you got 39 on one side, you got 1 on the other. I mean, which one's kind of heavier, all right? With that said, respectfully, what Sherry mentioned earlier is factually incorrect when saying that this could be lost revenue. It absolutely 100% is not lost revenue examples. I know what that means. I know what it is. I deleted all the lost revenue lines because I assumed that would come up. So what you're looking at in front of you is the non-lost revenue. And there's actually the Excel files, which you can go check the email record. There's columns in this spreadsheet that I had to hide to make the description on the far right larger font to read it. But if you unhide the columns, which is in that file right now, if you go look at it, you will see that the category of this spending is not lost revenue. So the board can do what it wants. You know, it's ultimately the board's decision, But if we don't do this, we're talking about making much harder and much more painful decisions because one county says we can't do it, but you got 39 other counties that say you can. Perhaps a better way is don't listen to anybody. Just make the decision for yourself. Don't listen to what I'm telling you. Don't listen to anybody else. Just listen to what the Treasury says. And I've got the quote. It says, "The final rule for state and local fiscal recovery funds," and this is a quote, "which takes effect April 1st, 2022, replacing the interim final rule published in May 2021, and states that an approved use of funds includes technology infrastructure resources to improve access to and the user experience of government information technology systems, including upgrades to hardware and software, as well as improvements to public-facing websites or to data management systems to increase public access and improve public delivery of government programs and services, including in the judicial, legislative, or executive branches." That's what it says word for word. Further in their reports, it also says that, talks about here, and this is not a quote, just so you're aware, Rock County isn't required to submit written justification for capital expenditures according to the final rule. You can check that on page 30 of 44. So if we were to be over $1 million, we would have to submit written explanation. In this case, we don't. Now, this is a quote per the final rule. Quote, "Recipients have broad flexibility to identify and respond to other pandemic impacts." So that is what it says from the U.S. Treasury. Just make the decision yourself and you use your own head on this one.
So first, that quote is just a portion of what it says. It also is from the, as noted in the notes, from the effective service delivery category, which has additional wording in there, which is one of the strong reasons where I believe this is risky. And just because we don't have to, in the reporting, we do not have to describe things under $1 million does not mean, that is not a reason to skirt the rules. Like I said, that smaller amounts will be audited by our auditors.
I think it's important to point out that Sherry's saying it's risky and Josh says it's not. Even the two of them up there can't even agree between the two of them.
Well, so if I could just say a couple points too. So I don't know that just because I didn't use the word risky, I mean, as Supervisor Zorl indicated that I used terminology about getting caught. Sherry used terminology about risky. Those are kind of the same thing. So I do think Sherry and I are in agreement in our notes about the appropriate level of concern that we try to express to you. And I just want to say a couple things as well that, you know, several good points are made, right? I am not vain enough to think that I am the preeminent ARPA expert in the country, that everyone else is wrong and I am correct. So it is entirely possible, I put it in my note, right, that there are others who will come to different conclusions. And as I said before, you may come to a different conclusion, and that's why you're going to vote here shortly. All I'm doing is offering you my advice. And I will note that the weighing of the 39 versus the 1, you know, I've not had time to read through these in sufficient detail. I didn't have time today when I received this to look at this in flipping through it. I would note, though, that I would agree there are things in this list that I would say are eligible too, or that at least are not the same thing that we're talking about here. If you were to look through here, there's things like cleaning courtrooms. We did use funding from the federal government during COVID for cleaning courtrooms. There's the things in here about Zoom. There's things in here about buying a van. And those aren't apples to apples what we're talking about here. So in the 39, there may be examples that very well are eligible. But as I think we're just trying to communicate to you, there are nuances in a 437-page final rule about language that isn't as easy necessarily to boil down to a few sentences. But again, to clarify, that being said, again, it is ultimately, Supervisor Zorl said, it is up to you.
Just a follow-up question, Josh, the salmon colored ones, there's only 3 on that page. So it's not a huge amount to read through. Would you say that that's at least a apples to apples comparison? El Paso County, Thurston County, Winnebago County.
Sorry, oh, there we go, okay.
1.8 million, 90,000, 72,000. Talking about inmates and technology.
So the shortest one is the Thurston County example. That is a van purchase. It looks like to me that's mostly about purchasing the van for the transfer of inmates. The bottom one in Winnebago County looks about, to me, and again, forgive me for not being able to read this in detail right away. It looks like that is about obtaining laptops for the public defender's office, which I would think that, may be eligible, may have been eligible during the pandemic.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, point of order here. I do not think it's fair to put the county administrator on the spot right now to have him look at a report that he's already said he didn't have time to study before the meeting today, to put him on the spot right now, to have him answer questions like this. I think it is totally unacceptable.
Agreed. Okay.
I'll move to table so then we can have the time.
There's a motion.
You have an amendment now, right?
Yeah, I don't think you can table. If your motion, I think the motion has to be your amendment.
There's a second though.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
I don't know if there was a second to the initial motion, so if there was a second, it's in the hands of the board. If there isn't, then I would change my motion to table so that I'd table for 2 meetings.
There was a second. I believe there was a second, I'm not quite
To
sure.
table?
No,
motion
so,
to table?
no,
To amend.
to amend.
If there's a second, then I can't do it.
Supervisor Whitledge. Yeah, okay.
Never mind.
So we have to deal with the amendment first. So any further discussion on the amendment? Supervisor Stevens, you had your hand up earlier. Do you still wish to speak?
No.
Supervisor Cullen?
I'll just make one comment that both sides of this argument are trying to do what's best for the county. You got to keep that in mind. So kudos to both sides trying to do the right thing.
Other comments, questions? Okay, we're going to be voting on the amendment. Lisa, would you please read that back for us?
So the amendment is to change the funding source from sales tax to ARPA.
This is roll call, please vote.
Point of order. I think the motion was made to table this, correct?
Yeah, we have to do the.
It was withdrawn because we had the amendment and a second on the table first. So we're voting on the amendment right now. So roll call, please vote.
What are we voting on again?
The amendment is to change the funding from sales tax to ARPA funding.
That's what's in front of us right now, and then we'll go from there.
So again, just to clarify, a yes vote would change the source to ARPA. A no vote would keep the source as sales tax.
Other questions? Clarifying questions? Okay, please vote.
Yes, 8, no 18, 2 absent, 1 vacant.
Okay, we're back to the original motion. Supervisor Zorro?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I would like to agree with the comments from Supervisor Levy in that, maybe we need more time here for Josh to look through some of these examples. I mean, I think that would be fair. And I don't know, if we were to do that, Josh, would you need one meeting or two? Hypothetically.
Whatever you want to give me, if that's the wishes of the board, I will do, so.
But let's call it one meeting, and I think, I mean, when we make decisions, we all want to make sure we're making an informed decision, right? Now, if Josh looks into this and says, yeah, I looked at, these examples in green when we're talking about AV, and I looked at these salmon examples, I mean, maybe it's a phone call down to our friends in Winnebago County to get more information. Hey, what perspective did you use to think that this was ARPA? Because we kind of we disagree. I mean, we might actually learn something from that. And if we could do that, this would solve more than half of the issue with the highway funding, and we don't have to raise taxes or cut a single service. So I think that alone would be worth tabling for one meeting. So I move to table for one meeting to give Josh an opportunity to look into it.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, there is a second. Discussion? Supervisor Mohini?
The question, the bids have been let, right? And we're going to be starting this?
Well, the PO won't be issued for the work until the board approves it.
Okay, but we've accepted a bid from Glen Fern?
No PO. I mean, they submitted the bid. This is the legitimate process we use. But Glen Fern is not contracted until the board approves.
How long is their bid good for?
I'm thinking on a construction, I can look. It's typically 60 days, but lately we've been getting 30.
Are you done? Other comments, questions? Okay, Lisa, please read the motion.
Motion is to table the item for one meeting.
This is roll call. Please vote.
Yes, 9. 17 no, 2 absent, 1 vacant.
Okay, we're back to the original motion. Any additional comments, questions? Lisa, if you'd please read the motion back for that.
Motion is awarding the contract for the renovation of the probate vault.
This is roll call. Please vote.
Yes, 23, no, 3, 2 absent, 1 vacant.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Next item is item 12, executive session pursuant to Wisconsin statute 19.85, sub 1, sum E, to deliberate the setting of bargaining parameters for 2023 negotiated collective bargaining agreements.
Moved by Supervisor Fox, seconded by Supervisor Baumkamp. This is roll call. Please vote to go into executive session.
Supervisor Winter? Supervisor Winter? Can you vote?
It was pulled.
Your switch is, thank you. 26 yes, 0 no, 2 absent, 1 vacant.
Okay, we are going into executive session. We'll take about, how many minutes?
Question on that one, huh?
How many minutes do you need? We'll take a 10-minute recess so the IT people can get their stuff squared away. So we'll reconvene in 10 minutes. Thank you.